Now then, the cycle starts again. We've got the little 275 International out with the saw bench on. I've sharpened it up. Yeah, it's January 2021. Well, there you go. Who'd have thought we'd have got this far? Anyway, as I say, the cycle starts again. I'm going to start filling the wood sheds ready for next winter. You might think that's a bit early, but I don't think so. And as far as cycles is concerned, we're also going to be planting trees this afternoon. And on top of that, a bit of channel news. I mean, this channel really is about sharing information. So you wouldn't call it popularist, but you know, the videos are there and people can refer to them, and I still get comments on videos that were put up 7 or 8 years ago, which is grand because it means it's working. And on that line somewhere I got a note. Here we are. Matthew Sachs sent me a message saying he'd fixed his Aurora grid inverter, which is great. That's another one fixed. It's not scrapped. And he sent me a nice donation through my PayPal, which is a sense of appreciation. And not only does he appreciate what I've done, but I appreciate what he's done, which is great. So we're going to crack on. The other thing is, I was downloading all the videos and all the data from my computer onto an external hard drive for last year, 2020, and I went, what's this? And it was a video that I'd forgotten to upload, and it was about a pasture topper that we bought in the summer. Bought it from a professional person, a doctor, and it just goes to show you can't trust anybody. But we fixed it anyway. The fault was not obvious, and obviously I think he'd been ripped off by the people who'd manufactured it, because it was supposed to be a 5-foot topper, but actually really it wasn't. And so the blades that came with it, although they fitted, I had to do a modification, as you will see in the video. I'll just show you the my preparations for planting the trees, and then we'll crack on. So in line with our methodology of making a big job into lots of very small jobs, we're not going to be planting all day. We're going to be planting this selection. Some of them are alders that we grew this year. There's some Norway maple, there's some grand fir. If you might remember, I rescued some grand fir and they've now got leaders and they're growing on. There's a larch there, and these spruce, a guy called Sam Keane sent me a load of seed. Oh, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. Well, Sam, if you're watching, fruit of your labours, mate. Yeah, we're going to be planting a few out. We already planted a few out last year, but these are some more. You know, they're a good sized plant now. Yeah, and they're in a 2-litre pot, so they should go well. Anyway, that lot of trees we shall be planting today, and we've got guards. I've got some new guards, some second-hand guards, and stakes and what have you. And we'll crack on with that. And at the end of the planting season, I'll maybe do an update just to show you how we got on. And this again is a thanks to the people who've donated to the planting scheme, which is brilliant. You know, we all share, don't we? So we'll crack on now. Now then, this is a tale of investigation and repair. This is a Danelander pasture topper. It's a 5 foot supposedly, with a PTO and everything, and when it came to us it had shorter blades on it, and the previous owner had said that he'd had a problem when he was doing some very rough pasture and he hit some logs or something like that, and there was a bit of damage. But that was only, he only told me after that, after the fact. But there was some 5 foot blades with it, so I thought, right, let's change the 5 foot blades. Well, there's a big grommet that fits in that hole, and you can access the blade bolts through that. But they were absolutely sea solid. I couldn't move them. So I phoned my neighbour up and said, have you got a 40mm impact socket? And he said, I'll come round and I'll bring my socket set round. So I brought a big socket set round, a 3/4 drive. Anyway, we couldn't get them undone, even with an extra 3 foot bar to give a bit more grunt. So in the end he said, let's flip it over, and we took the whole cutter assembly off, took it over into his workshop, got the oxyacetylene out and heated the nuts up to cherry red, and then squeak 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 they came undone. So that was it was brilliant that neighbours are like that. You know, it was a Sunday, he didn't mind. We had a bit of a chat at the same time, and there was the benefit of success. So, you know, neighbours, there you go, you know when you've got good neighbours, and I thank him for that. So I'll just show you down that hole, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the putting of all this lot back together, because obviously you can't film when your neighbour's there and you're in the heat of the investigation. So this is an after the fact, but for those people with these sorts of toppers, pasture toppers, then it might be very interesting, and for everybody else it's a tale of investigation. So let's just have a look down that hole. So as you appreciate, it wasn't bright yellow in there when I first started work on this. It was rusty and horrible. And there's the nut. And of course there's another one for the other blade. But they were absolutely rotten sea solid. And as you will see later on, it's a very fine thread. So there's no way I could get those undone. They were put on there, I think 12 years ago, and then it looks like this has sat outside in the pouring rain for a few years. But some serious agricultural engineering and a very good neighbour, and there you go. So here's the shaft. And it is, well, that shows 39.6 across there. Okay, so, and we have, start there, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 splines. It's pretty heavy duty. I've got to just clean round here, clean all this flaky paint off and paint that. But that's that. So I'll just show you the rotor. So here's the rotor, and it's about 20 inches in diameter. And there's the splines there to fit on that main shaft. And somewhere, there we go, that's one of the holes to fit those blade mounting bolts, and you can see just there there's a keyway. And that obviously fits like that in there. There's a bit of paint in that hole, so it's not going all the way in at the moment. And the blade is bolted on the back there. And that thread, the pitch is 1.5. And there we go. .26mm. There's the 4-foot and the 5-foot blades. So we're going to fit the 5-foot, and we need to put it all together. I'm putting them together in the vise because those keys that I pointed out to you earlier on, I think they've been rattling over the years, and they're pretty thin. So this has all got loads of copper slip on it, especially on these threads, just to, you know, more than you want and a bit more, because these might not come undone for a couple of years or even longer. So we just tighten this up and put the other one on. And it wants to be quite tight. There we go. I think that'll do. Right, let's get the other one on. So I've cleaned this out, scraped it down, and the yellow paint comes out again. A mate of mine gave me a load of this yellow paint quite a few years ago, and it's pretty durable stuff. I've used it on quite a few projects, like for instance when I was making the solar gate, which worked really well, and that of course was the whole thing. Instead of sensing the sun, it was run on a timer, because the sun and time are about the same thing really when it comes to breaking up the day. Anyway, so the yellow paint, and here's another quote, because the last quotes game, Sol Zero answered the critical question, and of course the answer was Red Dwarf. And this is the one about the sharpness. Sharp as some early 19th century satirical prose. Anyway, this quote is, "Watch out where the huskies go, don't you eat that yellow snow." Answers in the comments, please. Played this game for years. Some of the quotes obviously are a bit obscure, but anyway, that's that swapped on. That's all it needs. Just keep the wet from that steel as much as possible. Then we can clean those splines up, grease them up, put the rotor on, and then job's a good one. Right. Loads of copper slip around there. And on the threads, and on that shoulder. There we go. So let's get this on here. There we go. Perfect. And then there's the nut. There didn't seem to be a washer. Or there wasn't a washer. That is 36mm and it wants to be middling tight. So I locked the PTO shaft with a bar through the eye, as it were, so that then we could turn this, and you know, it was tight and a bit corroded, so you need plenty of lube on there and then tighten that up well. There we go. And it's come undone. It really is a two-man job to hold that end and tighten this, but we'll get there. Right, I just had a hand there, got somebody the other side. Just to lock everything in place. There we go. So with these new blades in place, or the originals, you can see that if these pins came loose, then this could strike that, and that's what I think's happened in the past. There's actually about, from the tail end there, from the back of the wing to this piece of box section, there's about 3/4 of an inch. So if those weren't tightened up properly, that would clatter into there. And it goes from there to about there. So obviously you need to repair that. So the question is, do we put a piece on the front and cut some of that out? Which would be the logical thing to do. I'm not quite sure. Because obviously I've got those bolts very, very tight, and that does, if it bends and flexes and hits something hard, it could just hit. So I think we put a piece of 1.5 inch box section on the front here and cut that at an angle and that at an angle, and remove that face and that face, leaving this front face in place. Might as well modify it whilst I've got it on its side. You know, it's only an hour's work just to sort that out, and then it's done, isn't it? So we just had to stop because it's raining, but anyway, I completed the modification. As you can see, I left the bottom and the front side of that box section in place, and then beefed it up with another piece of box section, and I closed the ends there and there, and there was a huge amount of muck in there that had to get out. So This is a modification with these blades, which apparently were the original blades on this machine before we bought it. Obviously there's a bit of a design fault, and this is supposed to be a 5-foot topper, and those blades are just under 5 foot. They're actually 4'10" across the cuttering edge, so I don't know, but there you go, modification done. So when that paint's dried, I'll give this a road test. I'll bring the old International round, take the saw bench off, put it on this, and top one of the meadows. With hay meadows, they're a habitat as well, so the hay is cut in July, whenever the weather's correct, because you can't just cut hay any time of the year. You know, you've got to have the energy in the hay, but also the weather conditions have got to be right. And then maybe a month later, it needs topping just to even it out. You don't want to have a hay meadow that overwinters quite tall, because it'll all sit down over winter, and all that material will stay there during the spring, and it'll keep the bottom wet, as it were. So you need to top them at some point just to keep it healthy, and also that all the toppings, all the cuttings will get absorbed back down into the soil. So there you go. Anyway, there's one more thing. The rotor, I never mentioned it, but that big round rotor, it didn't just come off. I had 2 big aluminium wedges, and we popped them in, sledgehammer on either side, just knocked them in between the back of the rotor and the case, and finally it popped off. But it didn't come off that easily. You know, it's been in there a long time. It's been sat outside in the wet grass. It's probably been used cutting wet grass, and all those things make things, all those iron fittings tend to seize up, and grass cuttings, they seem to, you get grass cuttings and steel, and as the cuttings tend to compost, as it were, or start to rot down, I suspect they exude some form of acid, because it definitely attacks steel. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch up with you soon. Cheers for now.